Hello, and today's learning target is I can determine which two whole numbers square roots fall between, and I can determine which whole number a square root is closest to. Let's start by reviewing our perfect squares. The square root of 1 is 1, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9 is 3, square root of 16 is 4, square root of 25 is 5, the square root of 36 is 6, the square root of 49 is 7, the square root of 64 is 8. The square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 100 is 10. The square root of 121 is 11. Square root of 144 is 12. Square root of 169 is 13. And then this 144 should actually be the square root of 196, and that is 14. Square root of 225 is 15. Square root of 256 is 16. Square root of 289 is 17. Square root of 324 is 18. The square root of 361 is 19. And the square root of 400 is 20. Okay, so let's determine which two whole numbers the following square roots would fall in between. So we need to recall those perfect squares that we had just wrote down. So the square root of 55. Which two perfect squares does the square root of 55 fit into? Well, we know the square root of 49 is below the square root of 55, and then what's above 49 would be the square root of 64, and that would be 8. So we're between, what, 7 and 8. So determine which two whole numbers the following square roots would fall in between. This would be 7 and 8. Now we could probably estimate what that will be. Square root of 55 is actually, it's closer to the square root of 49, right? So it would probably be around 7.4, because again, it's closer to the 7. But we just need to determine which two whole numbers the following square root falls between. So we did that, 7 and 8. So now let's look at the square root of 250. Well, if you recall from the last page that we wrote our perfect squares on, 15 squared is 225, and then 16 squared is 256. So 250 would be in between 225 and 256 if we were taking the square roots, right? So that would be in between which two whole numbers? 15 and 16. The square root of 325. So the square root of 325 would be between, well, we know that 18 squared, 18 would be with 324, which is right below 325. So therefore 19 would be above it, and that would be 361, and the square root of those. So 325 is between 18, whoops, let's fix that, 18 and 19, and it actually is very close to 18, right, because 325 is very close to 324. All right, and the square root of 200, well, we know that 14 squared is 196, right? Square root of 196 is 14, and then the square root of 225 would be 15. So we know that 200 is a little above 196, but definitely below 225. So this would be between 14 and 15. Okay, let's move on. Determine which whole number is closest to the given square roots. So again, we want to estimate which square roots the number is between, and then let's see which one it actually is closest to. So the square root of 27, well, we know that 25, the square root of 25 is very close to it, and that would be 5. And then I'm going to move that over a little bit. Let's move these. So square root of 25 would be 5. And then right above that would be 36, and that would be 6. Square root of that would be 6, but what is 27 closer to? 25 or 36? Well, it's closer to 25, so the whole number that's closest to the square root would be 5. So now let's look at 220. So if we think about our perfect squares, we have 14 squared is 196. So 196 goes with 14. And then above 14 would be 15, and the square root of 225 equals 15. So we know that 220 fits somewhere between these two, so which is it closer to? Well, it's only 5 away from 225, but definitely more than 5 away from 196. So here it would be closest to the whole number of 15. Okay, let's look at the square root of 105. And so I know that the square root of 100 is 10, and then above that would be 121, and that square root would be 11. And 105 is only 5 off from 100, but a lot more off than 5 from 121. So this would be closest to the whole number of 10. Now let's look at the square root of 306. Well, if you recall, 17 squared is the square root of 289. Well, square root of 289 equals 17. 17 squared equals 289. And then that's a little bit lower than 306. So what's above 306 is 18 squared, and that's 324. So the square root of 324 equals 18. So 306 fits between the two, but which one is it closer to? Well, 306 minus 289 gives me 17 off, okay? And then 324 minus 306 is 18 off. So what is it closer to? Well, 17 off from 17, but 18 off from 18, or sorry, 17 off from 289 and 18 off from 324. So this would be closer to the whole number of 17 just by a very little bit. So actually, the square root of 306 is about 17.49, which is closer to 17 than it would be to 18. And also, it's really good to make sure you know how to take the square root of a number in your calculator, so make sure you're using the correct buttons. Second, and then your x squared button to get you the square root, and please make sure you know how to get something or a number squared. So take a number and then press the x squared button to square it. It's really important that you know those correct buttons on your calculator. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.